everyone. Welcome to the Zone to Speak podcast. I'm your host, Juliana.
Hey everyone. At Zone to Speak, I know how important it is to stay healthy, strong, and ready for every ride, workout, and adventure. That's why I am sharing some amazing discounts on products I personally love, designed to support your health, performance, and overall well-being, whether you are an athlete or just looking to feel your best. Psych Plus. Their smart pump is a game changer, compact, efficient, and perfect for keeping your tires road and gravel ready. Plus, they have radar tail lights, smart trainers, smart fans, and more. Get 10% off the smart pump and 5% everything else. 15% off New Zest. Fuel your body with clean, plant-based nutrition. Their clean protein provides a high-quality, easily digestible protein source with no artificial additives. Perfect for recovery and sustained energy. Plus, they have Good Green Vitality, which is packed with essential vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants to support your immune system and overall wellness. 20% off First Endurance, top-tier endurance nutrition designed to support hydration, recovery, and sustained energy for long days on the bike or any endurance activity. 35% off Frey Skincare, made for active lifestyles, designed for skin that sweats. Their all-natural vegan and cruelty-free products keep your skin protected and fresh. I have been using Frey for about 10 years and my skin stays young and has never had a breakout since. 10% off Cold Age, high-quality supplements to support your health, from multivitamins to probiotics, collagen, and more. I personally take the women's fermented vitamins, the collagen, and creatine. 10% off Clearly Not Coffee, a delicious coffee alternative made from functional ingredients like mushrooms, maca, cinnamon, and rhodiola, designed to give you calmer energy, sharper focus, and immune support. I take this every morning. I love how it tastes, and I don't have any energy crash during the day. 15% off Ombre Supplements, premium supplements to support your training, recovery, and everyday health. And there's something special from me, your host. As a certified integrative health, nutrition expert, and holistic life coach, I'm offering 25% off personalized nutrition and life coaching with Genki Wellness. If you want to optimize your health, improve your energy, or simply feel your best, head to bemoregenki.com. For all discounts, check out the episode description. Use code ZONE2SPEAK at checkout and let these incredible products support your health and performance. Now, let's get into the episode. Welcome back to Gear Talk. In this second installment of our Zone to Speak Gear Talk series, I am thrilled to welcome back cycling journalist and gear expert Aaron Borrill for another deep dive into the tech shaping the way we ride. This time, we are shifting into second gear with exciting topics, from the latest in 3D printed saddle tech to the rise of wider tires across disciplines, road, gravel, mountain bike. We will unpack what's hype and what's actually improving performance. We will also get into the Garmin 1040 Solar, and Aaron shares his early impressions of the ultra-sleek Lab71 SuperX gravel bike he just got his hand on. Naturally, we won't resist touching on Cape Epic, where tech and terrain collide, especially as it relates to tire choice and how mountain bike have evolved over the past decade. Let's dive in. Aaron, welcome to Zone to Speak.
Thanks, Juliana. Always a pleasure being on the show, and just really excited to talk about some gear, answer some questions that our viewers and listeners had, and just dive straight in. So what I like to start with is something, that most cyclists look to purchase when they first get their bike. Well, it's obviously the second thing. It's the cycling computer. I know if 10 years ago, a few years ago, people were using their smartphone to track their rides with Strava, etc. I personally believe a smartphone is not the way to go, despite having various quad lock systems, etc. They're quite bulky and quite cumbersome. It's really good to go for a dedicated cycling computer, and one that I've been testing for a while, probably the last year and a half. I say testing, I've already done the review, but I'm constantly just experimenting with things, and I have a lot of things on test at the same time. It's the Garmin Edge 1040 Solar. And what's really impressive about this particular device, I'll put that up to the camera just to show. It's got, as the name suggests, it's got solar technology within this computer, but we'll get into that detail a little bit later. For starters, it's got a 3.5-inch screen with a 700 by 282 resolution, and it's driven by a touchscreen interface like many of these cycling computers nowadays have. The exterior dimensions are just under 60 millimeters by 117 by 20 millimeters. So it's not small, but it's not big. So if I could show that those that are watching on YouTube, the 1040 versus the Wahoo Element Ace, which we discussed last time, it is significantly smaller.
Yeah.
But it's still,
Big difference.
it's still quite a big device. And I reckon Garmin has hit a sweet spot with the screen size because it's not too bulky and cumbersome when you've got it fitted onto your handlebar configuration. And the screen is big enough so that if you are using navigation or you're monitoring certain metrics, they're crystal clear, and the screen really, really is good. If you flip it over, you'll also notice it's now got this metallic all-metal mount. And why this is important is that users of the previous generation 1030 will know that this was plastic, and some users did experience that failing or breaking off, and then you can't use it anymore. So this is a nice touch. No more broken mounts, which I think is really good.
That's great.
Getting into the solar tech. So if you look closely at this device, you'll see there's a dark colored sort of section at the top, at the bottom, and a faint little section on each side. It almost looks like a dark red almost. That is the solar panel. And they've utilized that space which wasn't used on the 1030 quite nicely. So it hasn't impacted the screen size per se. The battery life is the big talking point here and the big feature. So it's not huge, but when you compare it to other cycling computers such as the Hammerhead Karoo 2 or Karoo 3, for example, battery life there, if you're lucky, 15, 17 hours. With this, 45 hours of runtime.
Wow.
Which is really good. So that's with everything connected and riding in pure sunlight. Obviously, the solar panels can help regenerate some of the charge that is lost. That can drop to 35 hours if you do a lot of night riding or you're in an area or a region, possibly the UK, I don't know, it doesn't really get the sun. So it's still a significant amount of battery life. And if you utilize the lowest power settings on this, that will crank it up to 180 hours. So
wow,
if you
that's
are doing
major.
It's huge. So if you're doing a long endurance event, a 24-hour event, I know in the past people would carry power banks and all sorts of things to ensure that the device didn't die en route. You don't have to worry about that now. Do you have a question?
Yeah. So I think, my question is more on the charging because maybe it's a comment, because even if you're not doing long distance, there's so many things these days that we have to be charging. And it's so nice that you don't have to charge one thing all the time. And obviously, if you're an endurance rider like I am, not having to worry about that. I use the Wahoo. I'm super happy with it, but it is something that I'm constantly looking. Where's the battery at? Do I need to start charging? I do carry 2 power banks with me because one might fail. You never know. And you definitely cannot be without your map. So that's really cool. But do you think it's worth the price tag for the average cyclist?
Probably not, because if you look further down the family tree, you've got the Garmin Edge, like 540 and 840. Those also come with solar power. Some of them don't. There's 2 versions. They're a lot cheaper. It depends what kind of riding you're doing. And obviously also depends on how you prioritize your cycling computer. And if you want a larger screen, perhaps, you have trouble with your eyes, or you have contact lenses and you want a bigger screen, etc. I personally think it is, it's a tough one, because obviously as a journalist, I don't buy these things.
Yeah.
It's given me to test. It's a lot of money. If you look at it in British pounds, US dollars or euros, it's £580, about $700, about 600 euros. It's a frightening amount of money if you think about it. But what it gives you in return is a reliable device. You're going to charge it, if you use it religiously, you're going to be charging it probably 4 or 5 times a year, if that. Even if you're riding indoors and you're training on Zwift or MyWish or whatever, and you're in a room that gets decent sunlight in, it's still going to get the solar charge. So it's obviously going to come down to your priorities. If you're someone who is a weight weenie, doesn't want to have too much weight on their bike, and they like having small things, I would probably go for a 540 or something like that, or even a Garmin 130, that tiny little one.
So I guess it depends on your needs. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love one. It's quite an investment, but the solar feature, it's really tempting.
And it works. It does work. It isn't a gimmick. But to throw a bit of a curveball, I've got this device with me too, which is called the Coros Dura, right?
Oh, yeah. I wonder. I've seen it. I've seen it in some posts.
So this little device is a lot cheaper than anything else. It's about £260, 120 hours of claimed battery life. Sure, you'll see the screen is only it takes up probably 65 to 70% of the screen, because the top third is a solar charging panel.
Oh, okay.
So it's not as big. The screen's not as big.
Yeah, so you're giving away some of the features there, because for me, people are different, but for me, I need something bigger because I have difficulty reading.
Yeah, you're losing a lot of the real estate of the screen to this solar panel, but it works really well. It's a touch screen. It's got this little dial on the side that you can use as a button too, and something to scroll between the features. And there's another button. It's a little counterintuitive to the way the Wahoo and the Garmin work. I think that's because as users, we've become used to and accustomed to the way those processes work and how those devices work. But a really good alternative, and considering the price, £260, it's worth a shot, really.
Yeah, about half the price. Yeah,
and it comes in at under 100 grams. So this is about 98 grams.
Wow.
So it's quite light. For reference, the 1040 Solar is 134 grams. And as we discussed last time, the Element Ace is 201 grams. So it's quite heavy if you compare the two. So yeah, that's that on the computer front, unless you have any other questions.
No, I think that's a thorough review with the comparison of the three of them. I think there's something for everyone. It's just a matter of your needs and your budget.
Yes, I mean, we could go into like a crazy deep dive, but we'll be here for the next hour.
Yes.
Going into the mapping and the navigation and the screen, the tech, we can leave that for another time. If the viewers and readers want us to, and listeners want us to go into a little bit more detail on that, we can possibly do that in the coming episodes. But there's a lot of other cool stuff to talk about.
Yeah,
and
bring it on.
3D printed saddles. How cool is that? So I first got a taste of 3D printed saddles when I moved to the UK in 2019. My first assignment was going to Eurobike in Germany, and there Physique launched it's a bit of a mouthful, the Physique Antares versus Evo 00 adaptive saddle. It's quite a mouthful, but at the time, and I still think right now, it's a beautiful saddle. It's intriguing. It's superbly light, and it's definitely a talking piece. So
it is beautiful.
This is the exact saddle that they launched. The reason for this off-white sort of lime green color of the 3D printed cushion is at the time, this was the only color they had.
Okay.
But I still think it's nice and contrasting.
I
And it
like
looks
it.
pretty cool.
Yeah, it's different. Because now I think it's all black.
Everything's black.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this could potentially get very, very dirty very quickly if you're an off-road rider or if you ride in the rain and the dirt. But yeah, this is something I've kept just because it's one of those historic pieces that we're always going to go back to. So pretty light too, 150 grams for the saddle. And yeah, the performance is really, really good. And we can get into that now. So with your 3D printed saddles, they skip the traditional manufacturing process of the EPS foam or cushion or padding, whatever you want to call that. And this has helped speed up the development process. So making a 3D printed saddle is roughly 5 times faster than what you get on your traditional saddles. Those saddles are still being used ad nauseum today. I mean, you won't often find a 3D printed saddle, although they are readily available. All your consumer bikes come with your traditional padding. Since the launch of the Physique 3D saddles, we've had other brands come on board. Selle Italia, Selle San Marco, Specialized being among those brands, expanding their range by offering these 3D printed solutions. So the 3D printed, if we're looking at the build, the 3D printed padding is usually deeper and softer than your traditional gel-based saddle. And that's obviously to bring the weight down and to get a little bit more detailed in terms of the structure. So it's an additive process where the 3D printer sort of builds up layer upon layer, and this allows the manufacturing process to vary the thickness of each layer. So you can get what they call zonal cushioning built within these structures. These are called this cushion is called a 3D lattice. So that's the terminology that they use for this. It's a 3-dimensional shape made with hexagonal shaped polymers. That's according to the press release, and it's printed separately from the base of the saddle itself, and it's glued on. Traditional saddles require a mold for the padded section and the rails, and each time the designers want to change that shape, they have to make a new mold, and that becomes very tiresome, very expensive. I mean, it usually isn't viable for those companies because it becomes a niche product. Whereas now it's more easier for them to print these shapes in various sort of zonal cushioning, and it's kind of improved. It's improved the way the cushioning and the shock absorption work. So if we look at the benefits of these saddles, they can, as we've just said, they can provide more comfort thanks to the mechanical properties and the materials used. This includes better vibration dampening and pressure absorption. And of course, with this kind of technology comes pricing. And these are some of the most expensive saddles you can get on the market. They do complement your high-end builds. It's just something about the way these saddles look that adds another sort of tactile element to your bike. It's something a lot of riders use as a status symbol too, because it's something pricey. It's something quite intricate and a status symbol, really. But they do really work. So Physique also offers one-to-one custom saddle program. So this saddle and a couple of the others, which I'll show just now, are generic 3D printed cushions. They're a lot more forgiving than your traditional sort of gel saddles. So it's a lot firmer at the top, and they gradually get a little softer as you go down towards the sides, right? But with the Physique one-to-one custom saddle program, you can actually have this 3D printed lattice tailored to your pressure mapping. So you get a custom.
That the ones that they send that like a foam kind of, and you sit.
You sit on that. It does a 3D pressure mapping blueprint of your rear end, and then they use that to build the 3D printed lattice or cushion for your sit bones and your pressure points, which is really, really good. The other ones I've got here to show, this is the Specialized S-Works Power with Mirror.
I have that one.
It's a really good saddle. I really like it. This was one of the first saddles that was produced with the black 3D printed structure. All these saddles, interestingly, are made by the same company or produced or manufactured by a company called Carbon in the USA. I think they're based in California. They also do Selle Italia and Selle San Marco. So they all come from the same manufacturing facility, but they differ in terms of the design, the visuals, and obviously to fit in within the various companies' design ethos. This one here is the slightly more affordable version of this one I showed earlier. So it's exactly the same in terms of the shape. It's a black one, which looks quite nice. But this one is called, also a bit of a mouthful, Physique Antares versus Evo R3 Adaptive. So it doesn't have the carbon shell like this one does, and it doesn't have the carbon rails either. This has your normal alloy rail, and this is more of a sort of a fiberglass composite construction. It's a lot cheaper, but still you're still going to be forking out quite a lot. So something like this, which is your entry level 3D printed saddle by Physique, it's around £250. And if you want to go, yeah, it's not bad. I mean, you got to look after your touch points. I think we did discuss this last time.
Yeah.
It's very important that your hands, your feet, and your rear area are well sorted, because those are the only areas in contact with the bike. And if you're uncomfortable in those areas, you're not going to go very far. So it is worth investing in something that works for you. But still, at the same time, you do need to look at the various sizes of the saddle too. It's easy just to go to your bicycling shop, see one of these on the shelf, think, oh, this looks great. I've heard these are very comfortable. I'm just going to buy it. You need to do your research. You need to check the width of your sit bones. You need to see if a long nose saddle is going to suit you, if a short nose saddle is going to suit you, or if you need to go wider or more narrow. Everyone is different. So before you even consider, if you want to go for the generic off-the-shelf 3D printed saddle, do yourself a favor, go into a bike shop, particularly one that specializes in bike fitting. See if you can get your pressure mapping done. They will advise the size saddle that you need, and then you can go and get one of these. But if you want to go one step further and you want to have the full experience, and you have the money to spend, and you would see it as an investment, I would look at doing one of the Physique 1-to-1 custom saddle mapping programs and just go one step further and just look after things from there. But these two saddles here, the Specialized and the top of the range Physique with full carbon platform structure and rails, they're around £350. So I assume that's about €380 around there, maybe $400. So it's a bit of an investment, but if you are a diehard cyclist, you're looking for that extra layer of comfort, you're looking for something that's possibly slightly lighter, or something that's going to improve the way you perform on the bike and the way you feel on the bike, one of the first upgrades I would make in terms of ergonomics is getting a saddle. And it doesn't have to be a 3D printed one either. The regular gel-based foam saddles are just as good, and they are available in these shapes as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think comfort is key. Like you said, you can go much further or go anywhere if you're not comfortable. For me, when I moved to the 3D printed saddle, it made total difference. I feel much more comfortable, and also the right size. You're absolutely right. I didn't even know. And when my bike fitter was like, you should just try a 165. 165. I was riding 155. And it did make a big difference. I don't have the saddle source that I used to have on long rides. And for the absorption of the
corrugations and bumps. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Especially because I do mainly gravel. Yeah. Do you think there are more benefits if you're riding gravel or road or mountain bike to have a 3D print, or no? Everybody will be in contact. So it makes no difference, or?
Yeah, I think it can be used across all disciplines. But even if we look, I mean, if, for example, if we look to the World Tour Pro peloton, you probably find more traditional gel-based foam saddles than the 3D printed ones.
Yeah.
That could just be a personal thing. So some of these riders grew up riding those saddles and they don't want to change. They're quite stubborn. Pro cyclists are quite stubborn and they like to stay with what they know, what they've come to know. I have seen a lot more off-road riders employ these saddles because they do provide an extra layer of shock absorption and cushioning and comfort, because obviously you're going to be going through various kinds of terrain. Gravel is not just gravel. It changes depending on where you are and what part of the region you're in. It's going to become sandy. The gravel's possibly going to become corrugated. You're going to get areas with lots of rocks and choppy sections. You're not going to get your traditional halo champagne gravel roads.
I wish.
Yeah. So yes, I mean, if just concluding on these 3D printed saddles, essentially what you're getting is a saddle that has far more zonal areas that have been tailored to your various ways you sit on the saddle. So your traditional gel saddle there, it's the same density. So keep calling it gel foam. Traditional foam saddle, it's the same density throughout. It's not going to change on the sides or on the top. With your 3D printed cushioning, those areas have been the zones have been mapped. So it's going to be firmer on top and it gradually gets softer with more give on the sides. And that's what you want. I mean, everyone who's had a saddle sore will know those hard areas on the side of the saddle can really do damage. So yeah, I would say for off-road riders, it's probably more of an investment than for someone on the road, because if you are doing road racing, you're looking at, I mean, if it's a long road race, max 3 to 4 hours, or if you're doing some of these crazy gravel events or marathon mountain bike events, even something like the Cape Epic, if you're in the mid pack, you're looking at 6-7 hours, and you want something that's going to be good on your sit bones.
Yeah, for me, it's worth every penny of the investment, and maybe the next step would be the personalized one.
Yep. Yeah. That's going to add another layer of pricing.
Yep.
So yeah, I think this dovetails nicely with the Cape Epic, because from I mean, we've been chatting about off-road now and the saddles and long days in the saddle, and I think with this year's Cape Epic, it proved one of the most toughest in recent history. There's always something. There's always a curveball when it comes to the Cape Epic, whether that's heat, rain, mud. There's always going to be something. You very rarely get.
They got it all this year.
Yeah, they got absolutely everything. It's very, very rare that you get a smooth sailing Cape Epic where each stage is as planned. And I think with this one in particular, while it was shorter, if you can say that, I mean, the organizers had to stop and shorten stage 3 due to extreme heat. And that was in consultation with the race director, the medical director, and the local authorities. Just to put that in context, in the Western Cape, where the Cape Epic is run, the temperatures vary greatly depending on where you are. So you've got areas in the vineyards and the wine farms that get very hot and humid. Then if you go into the mountains, you get a different type of heat. And this particular stage was held in the Paarl area, which also is close to nearby wine farms. So you've got that humidity paired with the granite rock formation around the Paarl Valley. I had some friends doing the race. I also know a lot of people who still work at the race, and I had a guy on the ground taking photos for me in the race village for tech galleries and bike checks. He said to me the temperature topped out at 52 degrees Celsius, which is absolutely insane. The Cape Epic that I did in 2017, one of the stages was stopped when it hit 48 degrees. It was shortened. So just to show you that that's gone up 4 degrees.
4 degrees, that's a lot.
I don't even want to know how hot that was, but I think they made the right call.
Absolutely. Otherwise,
And
you're
then,
putting others in danger, your health.
yeah, and I think there were a lot of hospitalizations.
Wow.
They didn't just shorten that route; they actually stopped it for the safety of the riders. And those riders that were stopped, their race wasn't affected. They were allowed to start the next day. And obviously, the weather changed again, and temperature dropped. There was some rain, there was mud, and that carried on for the next few days, going into stage 7, the final stage, which was shortened to 40 kilometers due to rain and a dangerous descent. So it just shows you cannot. People have asked me about the Cape Epic and what to expect, and I always tell them you cannot prepare for it. You can't. You can even have the best tires and the best equipment, and there's always something that is going to catch you out. It's part of the race. You just need to get to grips with it, and you need to go into that race knowing that something like that can happen, and there's a possibility you aren't going to finish. Unfortunately, that's how it is. It's not called, the toughest mountain bike race on earth for nothing. But if we look at how the race unfolded, I wouldn't say there were any surprises in terms of who won. Nino Schurter obviously had unfinished business. He had won it 2 times before with different partners, and he had experimented a lot after the last time he won it with Lars Forster. So he's almost become known as a partner killer at the Cape Epic, because you can keep up with Nino for possibly 3 or 4 days, and then you're absolutely poked. But I think his combination with Filippo Colombo was really, really good. I think we saw Filippo suffering a bit in the latter stages, but that is going to happen. We don't know what's going on with him personally and his health, but they did really, really well. And they were given a good run for their money by the Willie Vittoria combination of Luca Brido and Simone Avondetto. They did really well, and I was actually rooting for them. I like having
Me too.
like the underdogs, and they're really, really strong. I mean, they won the prologue. They won, I think it was stage 2 or 3. So they really made it a tough race for Nino and Filippo. And it was only, I think in the end, it was Nino and Filippo won by 1.5 minutes. So anything could have happened. I mean, if they had punctured or something had happened on that last stage, they could have lost it very, very quickly.
That's true.
And then one of the highlights personally for me in the Cape Epic was the third place, the third place duo of Marco Joubert and Tristan Nokia, who are South Africans. It's the first South African pairing to finish on the podium.
That was exciting. It's nice, it's in South Africa. So just to have the South African, flag representing on the podium was very special.
Exactly. And it was Marco's second podium, or not second podium, second stage win. Him and Tristan actually won one of the stages, and Marco had won it a few years ago with his previous partner, Wessel Botha. So yeah, it's really good. I like the way they raced that. They animated it and made it really, really exciting for everyone back home. Big disappointment is probably the Matt Beers and Keegan Swenson pairing.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what you thought. Yeah.
I thought that they were in with before coming into the race, I thought that they were in with a good shot of winning it, just because they're good friends. Keegan is an absolute beast. And I was really shocked at the way his body responded to that race. That didn't reflect his ability at all. You could see something was wrong. I think he had issues with his back. And if you've got back problems, it's a race like the Cape Epic. It's a race that uses your core a lot. There's a lot of core work involved, and I was obviously suffering. And, I like the way he rode with Matt still. I mean, Matt was motivating him and helping him, and they finished with the 3rd place on the final day on stage 7, which shows what they're capable of. But I don't think we've seen the last of them. And
I hope they go back.
Yeah, I think Keegan knows. I mean, it's his second epic. He did it with Lachlan Morton before. So I think he knows what's coming. And perhaps if Keegan arrives maybe 3 or 4 weeks earlier and just gets maybe a little bit more climatized to the heat and what's on offer. And we need also remember Keegan's an endurance machine. He can ride really hard and for long periods of time. We're talking 6-7 hours. That's where he comes into his own. Whereas Matt is just he's a powerhouse. He's a bit of a he's a machine. He can ride short cross country style races. He can ride unbound gravel and average over 300 watts for 7 hours. He's that type of rider, But if they had done well, and in an ideal situation, they had won and Matt defended his title, he'd be the only rider that has won the Cape Epic with 4 different partners, and that just says a lot about Matt and how he is as a rider. But we're gonna hear a lot more about them now in the Lifetime Grand Prix coming up. I think most of the riders are congregating in the US at the moment, getting ready for the Sea Otter Classic.
Yeah.
But I think we should also touch on the women's race. And
Absolutely.
I was blown away by Annika Langfall. I had no idea that she had her baby with her at the event.
Insane. So happy to see that.
And she was breastfeeding after each stage. That is unreal. And to think that she still has the power and ability to stay up front there. I think she had a really good pairing with Sofia Gomez-Villafani. They both complemented each other. And I think it's going to be a different story next year if Annika carries on with this and she's going to, she's come out of retirement, so to speak. We're going to see the full strength Annika next year. And we're probably going to see a much, much bigger gap than what we saw to second place. I think it was just under 22 minutes, which is still massive. But I think we'll probably see over an hour next year.
And they had mechanicals and everything. Yeah,
and she had a couple of bad days. And Annika said that Sophia is the first rider that's ever put a hand on her back and pushed her up a climb.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So she must have had a really, really, really bad day, but still unbelievably strong to come back like that, especially just being fresh from giving birth and crammed in some training to go win the Cape Epic for a record, I think, 6th time. So she is the most successful Cape Epic racer of all time, which is really, really, really good.
Really mind-blowing, her performance, and especially, like you said, given that she was there with her baby and breastfeeding. I mean, just to complete the race, I think would be an accomplishment, but she blew it out of the water and won with her partner, Sophia. Incredible performance.
Yeah.
And teamwork. You could see the two of them, worked well together.
I think that got on really well, and there was a lot of respect there. You often find with the riders, there's a bit of ego, and they're trying to kind of, I wouldn't say hurt each other, but they're trying to sort of work out who's the alpha and who isn't, So, but I think there's a lot of respect there between them, and it showed because they knew exactly what they needed to do, and they executed the race with the limited resources they had, which is really good. I mean, we're looking at the second place team of the Efficient Infinity SCB SRAM, Vera Lusa of Namibia. She's a former winner. She won the race, I think it was it 2 years ago? Yes, it was 2 years ago with Kim LaCourte, who's now racing Women's World Tour. So Vera and Alexis Scott of the US, they finished 21 and a half minutes behind Annika and Sophia. And then the South African, another South African, all South African team came third, Bianca Horn, Hayley Preen of the Titan Racing SE Honeycomb. So it was really nice to see that too. Yeah. I do feel, and I'm going to be honest here, the fields in both the men and the women are not as strong as they've been in previous years. And that's because of the start of the cross-country mountain bike World Cup in Brazil. It's starting a lot earlier than it used to in the past. And the race does not provide cross-country racing points anymore because it's now an official marathon race. Before, you'd see riders like Nino Schurter racing his world championship jersey, and then the marathon world champion couldn't use his jersey in the race, but they've changed that. So for cross-country races not having those points available to them, it's probably giving them second thoughts. And then also having a race such as this, which takes so much out of the body, so much out of the mind and the legs, before the start of the World Cup, which is high-intensity, short racing, it obviously wasn't in the plan for many of the riders. So hopefully in the coming years that changes and we can get sort of full-strength teams back. But still, I mean, the quality of the athletes we had this year was really, really good. But I just like to see a little bit more depth.
I hear you.
Yeah. Just staying with, I thought, a nice segue into into our chat on tires, which was the Cape Epic, because
Yeah.
the Cape Epic has ruined so many teams' opportunities because of tire choice.
How
You
so?
can't go into the Cape Epic or any marathon stage race with lightweight cross-country tires, or tires with lightweight or thin sidewalls, smaller volume. Things have changed a lot. I mean, if we look back even 10 years, or let's look back 2013, right? Mountain bikes in their entirety were completely different. You had bikes with 71-degree head angles. Now, they're in the low 60s. The geometry of the bikes was super aggressive. They were on 26-inch wheels for starters, which was absolutely crazy. And your maximum tire width back then was probably 1.9 to 2 inches, which is not big at all if you look what's happening now. I think when mountain bike tires, or when mountain biking moved to the 29er, and tires started getting wider, and we saw 2.1s, 2.25. There was a lot of pushback, because it was like, these are really too wide. They're going to slow me down. What's the purpose? What's the point of this? And now we're seeing 2.3, 2.35, 2.4. We haven't seen 2.6, which was it's massive. It's gargantuan. I don't know if I have 2.6 here with me. I've already got 2.4. This is a Vittoria Mescal cross country race tire.
Wow.
2.4. It's a beautiful tire.
That's already big. Yeah, it is beautiful.
2.4 is it's gargantuan. I've recently been testing a mountain bike from an Icelandic brand called Lauf. It's the Lauf Alja. It's got a polarizing appearance. It forgoes traditional chainstays for this weird, I can share a picture afterwards, for this strange leaf spring, crazy design rear end.
Wow.
This came fully spec'd with RockShox flight attendant and 2.6-inch tires. I was blown away. I was like, how is this? How am I going to ride this thing? And it's 11 kilograms, so it's not heavy. I mean, for what it is, it's a really, really light bike. And the first ride I did on this, I could not believe how well this machine rode.
Wow.
I thought that the wider tires were going to hold me back on the flats. It didn't. And when I got into the twisties and the single track, I was faster than I've ever been before. A lot of this obviously comes, you can't just have a fat wide tire. You need to have a rim that can accommodate it. So what's happened is that your internal rim widths have got wider.
Yeah.
Meaning that they can...
It sits even wider, right?
Yes. So the tire doesn't light bulb over the rim. There's a lot more volume, and you're using more of the tire. The rhetoric behind this is that you can, as we touched on in the last episode, you can drop your tire pressure significantly. The sidewalls are exceptionally strong. The casing is exceptionally strong. And you can actually better use the entire tire, how it's supposed to work. Gone are the days when people were pumping them up to 2 bar on a mountain bike tire. Now you can go really, really low. I mean, think if we're going to PSI or bar, maybe one bar or less on something on a 2.6, and you're looking 20 PSI or less, which is super, super soft. It sounds illogical. It doesn't sound like going wider, going maybe slightly heavier, and then reducing the tire pressure. It sounds like, okay, it's going to be holding you back, but it's not. So particularly on corrugated roads or off-roads, gravel sections, you're going to get the lower tire pressure is going to act as an extra level of suspension. It's going to conform to the ground. You're actually not going to skip over the surface. You're going to go faster, working with the full suspension of that mountain bike. And then when you start going into the single track or steep descents, you can use the full breadth of that width of tire and the way the tread pattern works, because now the shoulder knobs are almost on the sidewall now. So you can really trust the front end, let the bike do what it's designed to do and not overthink things. In the past, I think we were using narrower mountain bike tires. The pressure was really hard. I think there was a lack of understanding on how all the components worked. People are putting a lot more resource and preparation into how they set up their suspension, understanding what suspension is. Your suspension essentially just keeps your wheels on the ground. Without that, you're going to be hopping around on the surface. So setting up your suspension right, understanding what geometry works for you. As we said, looking at the way you fit on your saddle, your weight distribution across both wheels. That's the way that bikes are getting faster. A 9-kilogram hardtail mountain bike is not going to be faster than an 11-kilogram full suspension mountain bike, even with 2.6-inch tires. Maybe in that one scenario where there's a really smooth 1 kilometer steep climb, the hardtail might be able to get past because it's lighter and you can potentially put more power down. But if that terrain becomes choppy and variable and loose, you want to have the purchase in the biggest contact point you can on the ground. So the theme we've seen, and this is across the board, wider is not just better, wider is faster. We're seeing that on road too. So also, if we're looking 10, 15 years ago, I mean, when I started riding in 2013, I think I was using 23C tires. And
the tires were so skinny. It was crazy.
I've spoken to friends of mine who started riding before me. They were using 19C. I mean, I don't even want to know how thin that is and what the ride quality was like.
And sometimes when you go to the Alps, I mean, there's a lot of like older generation. They're still riding. They're super skinny.
At 120, 120 psi, 8 bar.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. And I remember when 25C was launched, and that was considered wide. And my bike at the time, which was a 2014 Cannondale SuperX Evo 2, it couldn't accommodate a 25C at the back. It was actually touching the chainstay. So it actually
things have changed.
Yeah, it actually fitted. The tire fitted, but if I got out the saddle to climb, there was flex in the wheel and it was rubbing up.
Yeah,
but
or
now,
if you get a lot of mud or something, a little rock, then it's history. Yeah.
And then we moved to 28C, and then we moved to 28C tubeless, and things have really that kind of was the turning point. So tubeless and disc brakes, I think, was the turning point in road cycling. So now the wheel wasn't the braking surface. So they were using a disc brake now, which meant that they could now advance the engineering principles on the wheels themselves. So wheels could also now become wider, and with a wider wheel, with a wider internal profile, you can fit a wider tire and utilize the full breadth of that surface area. So then we moved to the 28C tubeless. I still think it's the way to go, even for road. There's a lot of pushback with the die-hard traditionalists saying that, but what happens if tubeless goes wrong? The same way as if you puncture with your tubes.
Exactly.
I just put a tube in, just like you. That's what will happen when it goes wrong.
But it has to go so wrong for us to put a tube in a tubeless. You have, oh my God,
plugs.
The plugs, you can go plugs. There are few resources before you have to and put a tube in. Yeah, we all carry tubes around in case we do need to use it. Yeah.
And if you find the right sealant that works for the pressure you're using and perhaps the conditions you live in, I'm often riding and I feel a bit of spray on my leg or whatever, and I've got a puncture and it seals and it's fine. I think the way forward is tubeless. The issue, I think, comes in with if the tire is hookless compatible. I think we're seeing blow-offs because people are using much harder tire pressure than they should on a hookless rim, and then the tire blows off. So you just got to do your homework. Don't be stupid about this. Do your homework. Understand the wheel interface, what hookless tires are, what hookless wheels are, and how they all work. And that's the best advice I can give. And you're only going to get the full potential of that tire if you use lower pressures. So you can use an inner tube or a tubolito or one of those Pirelli TPU tubes with a really nice tire, and you're going to get good performance on the perfect road, yes. But the moment that road you start moving into a broken road scenario, you're going to feel that skimming across the surface that I've spoken about. And that's possibly where you can even go wider. So there's a lot of research pointing towards 30 millimeter and 32 millimeter road tires. I think that's pretty wide in my opinion. Happy medium for me is 28C. I like 28C, it works. I've tried 30C before. It doesn't feel slow at all, particularly the roads around where I live. In Surrey Hills where I live, the roads are pretty good, but in some of the neighboring counties like Hampshire, or even if you go quite north, roads are quite broken, quite harsh and gritty. You potentially go and use a 30 millimeter, maybe even a 32 millimeter tire there. Could work. I know that many manufacturers, I was actually speaking to John Heisman of Vittoria earlier today.
Okay.
I met with him earlier, and he said they're developing 35 millimeter and 40 millimeter tires now for road. Obviously, that's not for road racing. That's where people need to sort of understand that that is for people who live in particular areas where the conditions are conducive to that width tire. So if you're in an area that has a lot of broken roads, forestry roads, you want to mix your tarmac with a bit of gravel, maybe there's a bit of cobbles, then probably go into a 35, maybe even a 40. I think that's a bit too wide for road, to be honest, but that's probably going to suit your riding. You're probably a fit rider, but you're not racing. You can't go pitch up at a criterium on 40 millimeter tires. It's not going to work. We need to put these things into context here.
Yeah.
But we will see 30 to 32 in the pro peloton. I think get to a point where there's a trade-off between comfort and aerodynamics. And I think 30 to 32 is probably the top end of that before you start suffering aerodynamics. But for me, and I think there's still quite a few pros out there, I hope, that are using 28 millimeter. It works well. We've even seen that even on the time trial scene, 29 millimeter, 30 millimeter tires, which is absolutely nuts. I was just sent these. This is not sponsored by Vittoria, by the way. These are just the tires I use for my time trial. It's the Corsa Pro Speeds, which are now available in 29C. Actually can't fit on my time trial bike. The max tire clearance I've got at the rear is 28C. So I'm using the 28C at the back, but I can use that on front because the tire clearance is a lot better on the front. And that's proved to be faster, not from I wouldn't say from an aerodynamic point of view, because you'll have to quantify that in a wind tunnel. And we know on the best of times, a wind tunnel data can change, from day to day. So
Hey, really?
It depends on the calibration of things and how things work.
So many variables. It's crazy.
There's so many variables. So I would say that just this, as we were discussing on the off-road side of things with tires, your wider tire, even on a time trial, is going to come down to the road surface again. So for my time trialing, I will use a narrower tire, say 28C or even a 25C up front, if it's a perfectly smooth road. Probably a track like Goodwood or Thruxton, where it's a closed circuit time trial. So I can get the best aerodynamic performance and obviously the best performance in terms of power transfer. I would go with the narrower tire. But if I'm going to be doing a time trial, which they call like a sporting time trial, which could be through a nature reserve or even something on a motorway that has a rougher road surface with more grit or whatever, I'm going to go for the wider tire, because then I can play with the tire pressures, which means I can put the power down. So that is the recurring theme here, is using the wider tire so that you can put your power down. Because if we go back to that 19C road bike wheel at 8 bar or 120, 130 PSI, on the wrong road surface, that's going to be sort of skimming across the surface. You're not going to be putting down any power. It's going to be wheel spinning. It's going to be jumping. Back then, harder and thinner was thought to be faster. Now we know, we've got the research that proves wider and lower pressure is faster. And that goes across the spectrum. Even on gravel. What we're seeing now, I mean, when gravel first became a thing, we were seeing, I think we were seeing tires that were under 40 millimeters in width. I think there were 30 millimeters.
Yeah.
I mean, you still get 32 millimeters today, and some bikes have been spec'd with that. But now we're getting tires all the way up to 50 millimeters.
Yep. Then what do you think of, since we switch to gravel now, of inserts on the wider tires?
Yes, I was chatting to John at Vittoria about this, because I'm looking at various options for gravel burn, because that's 850 kilometers, 7 stages, and it's going through very diverse remote areas where the terrain is going to change. So I'm wondering, a tire that could suit stage 1 might not suit stage 2 or 3 or 4, etc. But I've looked at some options, and I'm going to be going for a tire. I'm still testing this combination, so I'm not gonna mention the tire yet. But I'm going with something that has an open tread in the middle, with shoulder knobs on the side. So it's going to be fast rolling, but still giving me that grip in the corner, because the Western Cape region in South Africa, some of the gravel roads are notorious for sand in the corners. Obviously, the trucks that go through and the farm vehicles that go through on these gravel roads are churning those roads up. Sand moves to the side. It's going to be very corrugated, and that's where the tire insert's coming. So the tire insert on the gravel bike will not just be for puncture protection, because it will essentially work as a run flat. If you did puncture and you couldn't fix it, you could potentially finish the stage, last 20 kilometers on the flat tire, because that insert is going to act like a bit of air volume. What that insert is actually going to do is take a bit of the edge off in terms of compliancy. So it will act as another layer. So you've got your low tire pressure, then you've got your tire insert, which will act with even more cushioning. So it should potentially reduce your fatigue cumulatively. So you might not feel what it's doing on stage 1, but by stage 6 or 7, you've actually saved your body, your lower back, your joints, etc. So I'm going to be experimenting with a certain gravel tire and tire inserts in the next few months, and that's going to be paired on the race bike that I've just been sent, which is going to form a long-term test. It's the Cannondale Lab71 SuperX, which is very, very similar to my road bike, which is the Lab71 SuperX. So the geometry is similar. It's got a slightly steeper head angle. The bottom bracket drop is slightly higher. It's got shorter chainstays. It rides similar to the SuperX, but the riding position is a little bit more upright, but it's not much of a change. I opted for that. I mean, I just wanted a SuperX. I wasn't too phased on what model it was, just because I didn't want to drastically change my position on the bike. I didn't want to go to a different brand that I wasn't familiar with and have to adjust and get used to the way the bike performs. But it comes with a SRAM Red Access, 13 speed, so that Explorer mix, 42 chainring up front, 10, 42 at the back. There's a large spread of gearing, very similar touch points to what I got on my road bike. Same handlebar configuration. Everything feels identical, which is good. So I'm going to be trialing the tires and the inserts with the reserve wheels that come fitted on that bike. The tire size I'm going for is 47 millimeters. So I've been advised by Neil Gardner at Gravelburn, who's the marketing manager / director there, that he reckons the sweet spot is anything between 45 and 50 millimeters for Gravelburn. 45, if I'm talking from like my gut feel, 45 is too narrow for that race. 50, I think, is too big. That's a fat tire. I mean, 50 is essentially, I had it written down, I think a 50 millimeter tire is essentially a a 2.1. I think it's a 2.1 inch tire, which is like a mountain bike, 29-inch mountain bike
right.
tire, you know? So I thought that's a bit too wide. 47, I think, is more of a happy medium. I'm going to be experimenting with that, riding it on tar and on bits of gravel. Wouldn't call the gravel in the UK is not gravel. I apologize to any of the UK listeners and viewers. I know you might think it's gravel, but it's not. It's just dirt. You guys ride on dirt and bridleways and public footpaths. It's not gravel. It's off-road. It's sand and grit. If you want to call that gravel, it's UK gravel. So my training for gravel burn is going to be around doing long distances, because it's not going to be technical. There's no single track or crazy things. It's just long, hard, steep climbing district road with corrugations, some nice fast sections for 850 kilometers. So I just need to get familiar with the bike, and I'm going to be testing the tires on tarmac, be entering a few low-key gravel races here just to experiment with things. I'm not going to go for any finishing positions. It's all about experimentation and getting the right balance and mix so that I'm prepared. I know how the bike runs, because the terrain here is very different to the terrain there. So if you're going to be riding, like if I do Stone Circle, which is a gravel race around the Stonehenge area in the UK.
Yeah.
Are you doing it?
Yeah. I'm excited. Yeah.
Yeah. Around Salisbury Plain, I think there's 103 or 130 kilometer option, and
they have the 130
option.
I think there's a shorter option. I don't know how much it is, if 80 or 75, but I'm doing 130 so I can enjoy the weekend, because there is a 200 option, but I think you need to start at stupid o'clock in the morning, and I'm not going to do that.
I thought about the 200 because I like doing like the top event, but then I thought to myself, it's kind of counterintuitive because there are no 200 kilometer stages at gravel burn. The max is true. The biggest stage is 160, and the closest to the 160 is 130 option. You see, and I've ridden in that region before, the Salisbury Plain, and if it gets wet, that soil, which is it's like a chalk. It's a chalky soil with flint, and that just goes straight through the carcass of the tire. It's so sharp. It cakes. So firstly, that soil cakes on the tire, then it dries, and then you keep riding on it, and eventually all those bits and pieces go straight through and you puncture. I've never done a ride there during winter and not punctured.
Wow. Okay.
But it is going to be sort of in the summer, if you want to call it. So it shouldn't be wet,
dry.
And it should be,
especially that I'm camping as well. So
yes. It should be dry and dusty and actually quite nice, but it's also just what I call like a dry run. I just want to go take the bike out, see how it fares in race conditions, do a couple of efforts, see how I feel, and we'll take it from there. But in terms of gravel burn and what I want from it, it's just a pure experience. I want, as we spoke about last time, it's not just about racing. And I think we're all going to get to that point. Right now, there might be listeners who it's all about the finish line. I've been there. I've done that. I still enjoy it occasionally. But for me now, going back to my home country that I haven't been to in 6 years, being able to ride and race in an area I haven't ridden before and in such a remote area, I'd also want to just be able to enjoy the scenery on offer. And at the same time, also race should that develop along the way. But I'm not putting any pressure in terms of where I want to finish and perform. I just want to enjoy the race and take everything in.
Absolutely. And I love the format of stage race, that it's like a traveling group. You go from A to B, B to C, and you're always in a different spot with the same group of like-minded people. I think it would be so much fun.
Yeah, and once you find those people, it's strange because all the abilities you kind of gravitate together, and eventually, you'll start seeing people you rode with on day 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and that's how friendships are formed. I've actually, the guy I met today from Victoria, John Heisman, I actually met him at the Cape Epic because we both lost our partners on stage 2, and we were riding solo without partners, and I was on the start line of stage 3. So was he, and he pointed to my tires. I had Victoria Barzos on, and he said to me, good tire choice. And I was like, yeah, these are really, really good. I really like them. It's like, so do I. I was like, really? Why do you like them? It's like, because I work for Vittoria. And we rode the last 4 stages together.
Cool.
And we kept in contact ever since. And then when I moved over to the UK, I contacted him, and he was 20 minutes away from where I lived. And we've been friends ever since. And it's that exact same scenario where your ability and what you want from the race is going to group you with like-minded individuals en route. And you get lifelong friends from that, like I got from John and the 2017 Cape Epic. So it's also about the people you meet along the way. It's about everything that's happening around you, the journey. It's about the journey. But at the same time, if you're feeling good, you can go for the finish line, So,
yeah. Well, exciting now that you have your setup and you're going to start testing. I'm curious to hear more. Hopefully you can review more as we get closer to
I'll share my findings. I'll share my findings with the tires. I've got 4 different pairs that I'm going to be testing. The pair with the inserts, it works together as a system, but cool. I'm sure they will be. I'm sure the inserts are compatible with other tires too. But we can touch on that a little later. And then if there's anything the listeners want us to chat on in the coming episodes, they must just carry on sending through those suggestions, and we can answer those as best we can.
Absolutely, yeah. Let us know. Hit us with questions about gravel burn, about tires, insert, anything new. We'll be starting to work on the episode 3.
Yeah, and even if it's if there's a themed episode where we just focus on one particular type of tech, we can go a little deeper, because it's really hard to get into the details. We're literally just skimming the surface here, so it's quite difficult to pull out the important information because there's so much other stuff I can chat on. But I just wanted to make it simple and easy to digest. And then if anyone has any further questions, we can maybe do a themed deep dive on something and talk in a lot more detail on those things.
Yeah, let's see what comes in. And if there is a trend coming more often, we should definitely do the deep dive. That would be fun.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Great. Well, Aaron, thank you so much once again. I love this series. The listeners are loving this series. So can't wait to release this one and create more.
Brilliant. Thank you. Always appreciate the time and always appreciate chatting to you.
Likewise.
And that's all for today's episode. I want to thank the listeners for tuning in. Your support means everything. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider following, leaving a review, and sharing it with your friends.